How awesome was that, guys? Last night, Cody's got a cool setup over there. We've been having some fun, like up in the mountains and going for it. So I just got a slideshow, just some pictures in the backcountry. And as we're kind of talking, I can point out some features and some things we hunt. But, backpack hunting, it's such an advantage in today's day and age. Like, you can separate yourself from the competition and you can go have these grand adventures out on public land. And to backpack hunt these places, it's the purest form of hunting. Like, you get to immerse yourself in the backcountry where there's no rules, there's nobody telling you what you can and can't do. Of course, there's rules and laws and tags and things of that nature, but you're at the mercy of your own decisions to keep yourself safe, to go back there to make plays on animals. And I just love immersing myself back there. And so this backpack hunting, to be able to access this country, the most remote country that the West has to offer. And this remote country, this is the country that grows those huge bulls that we dream about, that grows those huge bucks. Those bucks, I see them every year with stickers and kickers and 30 inches wide. Like those aren't the bucks of the olden days. Those bucks are here right now, right in our age and time. Like, this is, like, we're going to look back at this time and say this was the golden age of mule deer, where things just change. You're not going to kill a 200-incher off the side of a road, or if you are, you're going to have to get really lucky, and it's going to be tough to do it twice. But through these skills you can develop in hunting this backcountry, you're able to still find these bucks. And this adventure and taking that, taking on the big wilderness and the big backcountry, like, it's leaving for an adventure. And I know, even leaving my house, I'm nervous, leaving my family. Like, I know I'm going to be going for it in the mountains. And it's really that same feeling that you guys probably got coming to the seminar, or the guys that signed up for the hike, just knowing that you're signed up, not really knowing what you're in for, just knowing you're going on an adventure. And I just, like those are the precursor and the desire and the feelings we all need to get out there. And the main thing with the backcountry is just to go for it, just to make plans and to plan a hunt and to get out there and go start covering miles. It's such an immersion, and it seems like the toughest step is just to get started, or just to plan that hunt, or just to get out there. There's so many logistics. So I just like to get started, and I started picking these adventures. I started by learning my home country around Montana, a lot of that country that you guys got to see back in that wilderness, just traveling those miles. And I learned by getting things wrong a lot, and covering a lot of miles. And a lot of times in this wilderness, like, you do your e-scouting and you do your prep and you have plans and backup plans. But as you get back in there, the backcountry is going to challenge you. Like, there's a reason we're all here. We're all here to learn and progress, because backcountry hunting is really tough. And there's shortcuts, Of course, you could pay for a hunt where the guides and the outfitters know the animals really well and put yourself in them. But as a public land guy, it falls on our shoulders. It falls on our shoulders to put ourselves in good area and give ourselves opportunities. And as we go and we try to create these opportunities in the backcountry, like, the biggest thing for me, like these guys said, there's nothing special about me. Like, I just have a drive and a passion for it, and I just love it. And so, when I get the chance, I'm just in the backcountry. And so I go up a lot of these drainages. I mean, I can't tell you, I had this dream of hunting high country mule deer. So we raised our hand for elk and for deer. And if it's September, I'm an elk hunter. If it's any other season, I'm a mule deer hunter. Like, I absolutely love mule deer. So I cut my teeth around here hunting elk and learning these units. And I always had this dream of hunting high country mule deer. Like, it really intrigued me. I liked the remoteness of it. I liked how these guys would kill these deer, see these deer in these alpine basins up in these chutes where goats and sheep live, up above tree line. And it's like, it's absolutely mountaineering up there. And so these mountaineers, they climb to the tops of these peaks, and they crest and they peak grab, kind of like we did on the Sphinx, and come back down. Well, when you're mountaineering, you only have to make it to the top and back down. Like, us as backcountry hunters, we got to make it up there. We got to survive for 10 days, you know, whatever the weather throws at us. And then you're trying to get within a stone's throw of a giant mature mule deer. Like, that is really difficult. It's one of the most difficult things out there, but it's why we like it too, you know, because it challenges us. Because you're never done learning, you're never done improving. It's this ever evolving, you know, I don't know if it's a sport or a passion or what, but it's ever evolving. Like, I'm constantly learning, and that's why I'm so excited about it. So a lot of these times in the wilderness, like even me, I'll do all this e-scouting and I'll have everything laid out. I know where I'm gonna find my 200 incher and I know where I'm gonna put my arrow in them and back in this basin, and it's all gonna happen, and you plan it out. And you get there and it's kind of like being in a fight. You get hit in the face. Like, all of a sudden you get in there and they've moved in a bunch of sheep in this area that you've scouted, and you've spent 6 days in there scouting, and now there's nothing but sheep feeding up in those meadows, chasing every mule deer out of there. So you have to adapt. And like, one of the best attributes you can have as a backcountry hunter is to be able to go for it, persistence, and being able to adapt to the situations. And so, like, I can't tell you, where I was getting with this story is I wanted to hunt high country mule deer. I'd killed some elk with my bow, I'd traveled this backcountry, and so I started looking for high country deer in the Madisons, and I'd have to hunt really hard. I put in 20 days and I maybe get one chance at one buck. And I got some stalks and I learned some things. So I started looking at it and going, I gotta go to some of these areas that just hold more mule deer and are known for bucks. They kind of have more grass top basins. And really, I just started looking at the historic mule deer spots of the olden days, and I just started keeping notes and folders on all these spots, all these states. Anything I was interested in, I'd put in a folder. Anybody I'd talk to, I'd write down the conversation, I'd put it in a folder, and I still have folders for every single state I have. And if I get a chance, I'll scout that spot. Or where I really do a lot of my looking is during tag season, which tags I can get and which tags I couldn't. But so I wanted to hunt these high country mule deer, but around the Madison, it just wasn't feasible. The elk and the mule deer compete for the same food source, and there's muley bucks in there, and they kill a good one out of that valley every year, but I just couldn't find them consistently enough with my bow, you know, to be able to feel like I had a chance to get it done on a mature buck every year. And so, you know, I started looking for these historic areas that had better mule deer numbers, and I just started picking them off a map, and even places that people said were no good anymore, but I saw a lot of Boone and Crockett's and Pope and Young's come out of there. I'd just go there, and so I started looking around Montana for a high country mule deer spot. Now, I'm telling you, I have been to probably a dozen mountain ranges, hike way back in there. I can't for an overnight or a weekend trip scouting for mule deer. I've been to mountain ranges where I don't even see a deer. I go up there, I don't even find a buck, I don't even find a deer. I just chalk it up to experience. And then I keep that persistence where, you know, okay, they're not in this mountain range, well, they're in this mountain range, or this is the next one I'm gonna go to. So I just keep hopping around looking for these places for high country mule deer. But finally, after a dozen mountain ranges, I stumbled upon one of these mountain ranges in northwest Montana. So there's a couple different mountain ranges up there that are really good for mule deer. And, you know, the Bob, you know, and they had the missions up there, the cabinets. Like, these are all just awesome mountain ranges. And they're good because they're really rugged. Like, that's why they're good in there. I think I was telling somebody about the mission. So I found this mountain range, and all of a sudden I got in there and I started picking up deer and bucks on these features like they should be. And so I started hunting in there, and it took me 2 years in there. I think I hunted it for close to 16 days, and I was finally able to bring a mature muley buck in there. But it was 10 years in the making of studying all these mountain ranges, getting skunked up all these drainages. Like the biggest thing with backcountry hunting, it's all about mindset. It's just like you guys getting on that plane, committing to this hike, committing to the adventure. Like, if you just commit to that backcountry and dedicate days to it, and then you just put in the boot miles, and you don't need to kill yourself. Like, I know when I'm hunting, you know, I train really hard throughout the season. I prepare really hard, but I don't like to run on red line. I know red line, I'm on borrowed time in the backcountry. And what I think of red line, like, my body can sustain, and I train for X amount of miles a day and then this much elevation. And usually I try to hold myself to under 10 miles a day. I try to hold myself to about 3,000 vert. We did 48 vert the other day, so we did quite a bit, but 3,000 vertical. And if I start pushing over that, like if it's a go for it scenario and I see a buck and it's gonna take me, it's a 20-mile stalk to in and around and I'm in the middle of the night, I have to weigh my options. And a lot of times I'm gonna send it. I'm gonna go for it and I'm gonna blow myself up, but I'll feel it the next day. But I've learned over the years that if I don't run red line, like I can just sustain that energy and sustain that pace. And so I know I can do 3,000 vert, 10 miles a day. That gives me tons of country to cover every single day. And so, I just go about it that way. And a lot of times, some days you're traveling more miles. I mean, what I like to do in the backcountry is once I get in there, so I commit to a spot, I figure out where I'm gonna go. I do a lot of looking on Google Earth. Like Google Earth is great. Like you can swap between images, which really help for the high country. So there's a timeline on there. And so you can set that timeline and look at that mountain range that you're looking at, and you can look at it in winter or summer or anywhere throughout. Now, the newer images, they do have more detail and they are better to look at. But if I can find the right timeline on that Google Earth, all of a sudden those meadows go neon green on the tops of those, and I can see these feeding features, and I can almost see the bucks on Google Earth. Like I can just tell, and being able to read Google Earth, it's almost just experience in country, experience hunting bucks, experience hunting bulls. Like there's things to look for and tricks to it. But really you're looking for what looks bucky to you from your experience. And once you pick these spots, there's no guarantee there's animals in here. I've had the best spots in the world, and like I say, you gotta go put boots to the ground and go look at the spot. What really tells you if there's animals in there, you get the best vantage point and you pick that whole thing apart. You see what's moving in there. And from the master vantage point, you may not see 100% of the game, but you're gonna see 70, 80%. Or, I don't know what the percentages are, but you see a lot more of the game than hiking around looking at one meadow at a time or 100 yards at a time. And so, a lot of hunting this backcountry and figuring out what's living in there, like I live and die behind my glass. And it's almost believing in the process of glassing too. It took me a while to buy into the system. Like, yeah, okay, I glass, yeah, I hike around and I look with my binos, but to actually go into the mountains and when I'm looking at Google Earth, like I may be looking at this sweet feature, I'm not looking to put myself on that feature. Like I'm looking to put myself on a knob that looks across from that feature. I'll hike all the way up the wrong mountain just so I can see the right mountain. And when I can see that right mountain and I can see it with my glass, and you find the right angle on country, like the grain of country. Like there's a grain to the way you look at things, and when you find that master vantage point that shows it off, like we had the other day from the saddle of the Sphinx there, where we can just look at that whole hillside, you just see what's living in there. And you may not see it on your first sit, and if I have a really good spot, and maybe I don't turn up a good buck, but I saw a few smaller bucks, well, I'm gonna hang in there for another vantage point. And so my approach to this backcountry hunting is I'm almost nomadic in traveling, that I'll go back and I'll do miles, and who knows where I'll start hunting. It depends on the country. Like there's so many ways to separate yourself from guys, and trails are the highways of the backcountry. They'll really get you way back in there. And I like to think of them like a handicap ramp. They get you in there and it's a good gradient, and you don't even got to stop walking. You just keep hiking those trails. They get you back there, but the best hunting is off the trails, so you use those to access different country, to access different vantage points and look at it. So when I'm traveling the country, like I make myself a game plan for the mountain range. I find like all the parking lots, trailheads. I try to really familiarize myself with the entire unit, where I'm going to be able to access, and then, to put boots to ground is so helpful. To be able to go scout areas for high country muleys, to be able to find them in the early season, that's where they're going to become bow season. They're going to be right around in those same basins. So advantageous. You can just get into country starting right now. July 1st is when I start scouting, travel country, and as you're picking out these bucks, you're taking tabs on where the best bucks are. And then when you go back, you already know the country. You already know where you can park your truck. You know where the trailhead is. It's so, like, you go down on a hunt, and if you've never been to an area, boy, it's like a lost feeling, you know? But some of these areas are 12, 14, 16 hours away, like we can't scout them. So all we can do is make our best plan through our Google Maps, through our Onyx is so awesome with all the overlays they do, topography and things. I like to plan out where I'm going to get water, where I think I'm going to be able to camp, where I've got cover, what I'll be glassing, and I kind of make myself a rough game plan for the hunt or for the scout before I ever get there. And then as I get there, I'll always have a backup plan too. And I hunt a lot on feeling. Sometimes I'll be driving to the trailhead and I'll just have a feeling that I should go to the next trailhead down and up the mountain. Like hunting with me has got to be tough to take for guys because I'm constantly changing my mind, theorizing and thinking over where I should be and where the bucks are. But I usually have myself a plan and a couple backup plans. And I just find if I have a plan and a backup plan, like during the hunt, when I get lost and I can't find animals, or when I get in there and I've got a lot of hunting pressure, when I get in there and I find sheep and the deer that were there aren't there, like all of a sudden, like it almost rattles your confidence a little bit. Like, I'm not into animals. I put all this effort into getting back here and I can't find them. But if I've got that backup plan, like no thinking necessary. I already know that I've got plan B, plan C, like, oh, I really want to get into this spot. I didn't see any animals in here. I gave it all I had. I'm going to go out to this next spot. It's also important as you're hunting, like I talk about second guessing and changing my mind, but you really have to believe in the spot you're at. It's so easier to say the grass is greener on the other side. It's so easy to go up a drainage and think, oh, I should have been up that next drainage to the south. To go up a drainage and go, gosh, I should have been over here. Or just to start up it and you're not seeing animals and all of a sudden your confidence is rattled and you're just not glassing as effectively, as efficiently. You're not putting in the effort. You're not hiking over to see what's over the next peak, the next saddle. Like it's really easy to get discouraged back there. So like when I'm hunting back there, I try to keep really positive, in a positive frame of mind, and then having these backup plans to just know, okay, so now I'm going into this spot, or now I'm going into this. It's already preset. All the thinking's been done. I don't need to second guess it or second guess if I'm going to kill a buck on this hunt or not. And when I go on these things, like I say, like focusing where you're at, God, it's so easy to think like big bucks are somewhere else. If you're going to go into a spot and put that effort to go in there, you hunt it hard. You even if there's nothing in there, like I want to make sure there's nothing in there. I've hiked all the way in here. I've climbed 2,000 vert. I'm on the vantage point. I'm not going to leave early before I see what's in these basins, And if there's nothing in here, well, that's fine. I'll go on to the next play. But you've got to hunt areas like there's animals in there. You walk around with intention. You're not breaking sticks. You're aware. You're pulling up your binos and you're looking at a spot. And I can see it when I bring buddies. If they think it's a good spot, they're looking everywhere and picking out game. If they think it's not so good or we've had tough hunting for a couple days, all of a sudden they're just not making the extra effort. They're not looking in the drainage. They don't want to hike back to that next spot. Like that's the attitude that kills bucks and bulls, is to keep looking, to keep searching and keep finding and hunting those areas hard while you're in there, like giving it all you have in there. It's so important when you're in there. And mindset in this backcountry, whether you're hunting solo or with buddies, it's absolutely everything. It's 90% of the equation. Like just deciding that you're going to hunt the backcountry, deciding that you took 7 days off work and you're going to hunt hard for all 7 of those days, keeping your mood up when you're tired, looking over that next drainage, like you just create opportunities. Like you don't have to be that smart a hunter to do well in the wilderness. You just got to bumble around. Like you bumble around, eventually you find a good spot back there and man, you find action. Like I love wilderness spots or backcountry spots because a lot of times when you go back in there, you separate yourself from the person and it's you versus the animals back there. So all of a sudden you take that pressure aspect out of it. And when I get back there and it's me versus the animals, I just feel like I can kill back there. Like if it's me versus them, I can make calculated, methodical plays and get in. And really, it's just getting in and getting that experience and going for them. But the attitude is so important. Like that's absolutely everything with backcountry hunting. It's just making up your mind that's what you're going to do, making up your mind you're going to explore these drainages, making up your mind you're not going to give up early, you know, and to keep pushing. I've had hunts. I had this hunt in Idaho. And so it was a couple years ago. I have killed a high country mule deer the last 13 years in a row with my bow. So I've got a pretty good streak going. I love to hunt them. Sometimes that's a couple different states. So there was a year, like 2 years ago, I didn't draw any tags. I didn't draw anything. And I'm pretty aggressive with my tags. Like, guys, I'm not hunting 5 and 6 point units. I've hunted a lot of 5 and 6, 7 point units, but it was back in the day when nobody was putting in for bow tags. You'd pick them up for a point or two. And since then, I've had to adapt and evolve in this new age of hunting. You know, it's finding these locations that you can draw every year or two. Even like this year, I'm going to Colorado in a 0 point unit. You know, so there's a lot of these good spots that just don't take many points. You just got to go explore that backcountry back there. But so I had this hunt a couple years ago. I didn't draw a tag. I really wanted to keep the streak alive. Hunting high country mule deer, you know, it's kind of like rutting elk. It comes once a year and it lasts for about a month. And you're trying to soak up as much of it as you can while it's here. And so I didn't draw a tag. So I started looking at my options. And I started looking at Idaho, and they had over the counter, and they've got some backcountry down there. And so Idaho was my last holdout. I've killed bucks in the majority of the western states out there, all the big ones for sure. And Idaho, I hadn't killed a buck. I don't know why, I just hadn't embarked on the challenge of hunting the backcountry of that Idaho. So we're gonna go hunt this Idaho backcountry. And so Idaho, I live in Ennis, it's right across the border. It takes me 3-4 hours and I'm into mule deer country. So I can run down there a bunch. And in the summertime, I'm just itching to go. Once it's July 1st, like right now, I just want to be in the mountains. And these scouting trips, like I learned stuff from these scouting trips where deer are located and how to hunt. I'm also sharpening my skills. Just like us this weekend in camping, like you get familiar and comfortable with sleeping in the woods, with backpacking around, with carrying your pack, with knowing which food to bring, knowing which water. So these scouting trips are as much a training mission as anything. And you get to go put on a bunch of miles in these training missions. Like the deer have such a lax attitude this time of year that you can just cruise this high country in middle of the day. You're glassing down basins and there's 7 bucks down in there and they're all great big 4 points. And you look at them and then you go, okay, well, take some pictures. I know where those are at. Travel to the next one and look down the next drainage. And there's a bunch of scouting pictures in here, just different places where I've been. But I just love those scouting trips, not only to learn the deer, but also for myself to just get me really comfortable with being in the woods and carrying my pack. But anyway, so in Idaho, so I picked up this over the counter and so I start scouting Idaho. Man, I am getting my butt kicked. For a muley hunter that kills them in every state, like I can hardly turn up a decent buck, and I am putting miles on. I tried to hunt this spot, and any of these spots could still be good. You know, I'm only picking a few drainages and then trying to look at as much as I can, but like that Palisades area, it's a historic area for mule deer. They've killed a bunch of big ones there. And that Palisades area is right over the border of Wyoming. And I hunt that border of Wyoming, and I've killed really good bucks right there. So, you know, my thought process is, man, all right, that Palisades area on that border, that's gonna be hot. So I start backpacking around in that country, and oh my gosh, I just can hardly find a deer in there. You know, I just can't turn one up. Now they let rifle hunters have a couple tags. I mean, I'm not here to dissect Idaho's management policies or anything like that, but I just got in there. It's the most beautiful mule deer country. You look at this on Google Earth, you look on it on any map, any picture of it, I'll bet you $1 million there's a big buck in there. It just looks too perfect. It's too good. And this is country too, where there's no motorcycles permitted in there. So I know I've eliminated, you know, those guys that are going to be riding motorcycles around. Like this is a wilderness unit, or at least treated as one. I think it's national forest, but treated like wilderness where there's no motorized vehicles. So I start scouting these areas. I just can't turn up a deer. I think I did 4 or 5 scouting weekends that year. And I think I was yet to turn up. I may have turned up a 4 point or a handful of bucks, but nothing that led me to believe I was going to go down there with my bow and arrow and be successful. Like I need chances with my bow. Like even as good as I am and as many stalks as I get on these mule deer, not as good as I am, as successful as I am, I'll say. Like, they've evolved from avoiding mountain lions. I think I said that this weekend, like thousands of years of avoiding mountain lions. And a mountain lion on his worst day is way sneakier than I can ever be, So these things are so switched on and their instincts are so keen and they're so good at living in their environment. They're really tough to outsmart. So a lot of times, some years I'll get it done on my first stock. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm pro, I got this. Like it all just comes together like it should be. Some years, it'll take me 5, 6 stalks. I know on antelope, I've had some years where, gosh, I have 15, 20 stalks into trying to kill an antelope. And then you get everything right on your stalk, and these things can jump your string. Like some of these things are just out of your control. You do everything to handle what's in your control, but when it comes down to it, I've had a 200-inch muley that I've hunted for 7 days. I've finally crept into bow range, played it perfect with a perfect wind, and he feeds out broadside to me just at that range you want, like mid-40s right there. No idea I'm there. None of those bucks know I'm there. I'm tucked in these trees. Go back to full draw, and I loose my arrow. No buck knew I was there until my bow went off, and that buck spun and turned down that hill, and that arrow missed him. I did everything in my power right, and that buck can jump your string. That can happen. Like bow hunting can take you to your highest highs. Well, it'll also take you to your lowest lows. Like that's part of it. And getting over those lows is a big part of it. But to get back to this Idaho story. So scouted a bunch of weekends. I couldn't find a deer. Like I was starting to get worried about it. I just kept, I'd go home. Like these scouting missions are really key too, because you get to go look at the country, put your eyes on it, and then you can go back home and look at the maps. You are so much better looking at the maps after you've looked at this country in real time. You can start to transpose the information and the lay of the land and the way it looks and transpose those to areas of surrounding mountain ranges or within that mountain range to learn more. That's when I'm at my best, is when I've seen it with my own 2 eyes. When I'm at my best is when I hunt a spot for 2 years. Once I've been there for a year, I learn where the bucks are, maybe I found success. Well, then I go home and I just start studying where I've seen these bucks, which features, which way they were rolling, and I start to look to expand my knowledge of that unit. So it's like, well, where else can I hike in there? Oh, there's a drainage over there. I never even looked at that. Where's my vantage point on that one? Gosh, that's only 2 miles from where I camped right there. Oh, look at the next one down the line. But I'm so much better when I hunt a spot for 2 years or after I scout and get my eyes on it. And then I go home and I look at the map and it's like it makes more sense. It's like puzzle pieces fitting together because I've seen the country. So anyways, Idaho, I'm scouting. I can't find a shooter buck. I'm all over the state. I finally end up, I just make a game plan for opener. I'm out of scouting weekends. I haven't found a shooter buck, and here we are, and the pressure's on. I don't film a lot of hunts, but we're gonna film this hunt, and so the Eastman guys are counting on me too. They're gonna pay a cameraman, they're gonna pay permits through the National Forest. Like, I got pressure on me. Like, now I gotta find one of these things. And two, I just pride myself at being a good public land hunter. Like, I feel like if I put forth the effort, I will turn up some critters. And so I have to go down there and go down, like pretty much not go to any of the spots I scouted because I've determined there's no deer in those spots. So I've eliminated those. So I picked this mountain range in Idaho that's pretty rugged. And so we go in there, and I go in, my buddy Dan's filming for me, which is really fun because then you're just hunting with your buddy. His job is to get the footage, your job is to find the deer, but me and him hunt really good together. And so we start camping and hunting up there. It took me 5 days to find my first buck. 5 days. 5 days in 50 to 75 miles, and who knows how many thousands of feet of elevation. Just going way in this backcountry and sitting on the right vantage points morning and night, picking them apart, and just, maybe pick up a 2-point, a few does, it's just so slow. But you just keep putting forth that effort and you keep traveling and that persistence. It's so funny how it just comes together. You feel like it's impossible. At that point, and not seeing a shooter buck in 5 days, like I thought killing a buck with my bow, it seemed like mission impossible in this state. But we kept pushing, we kept looking. Finally, we got into a spot and we started glassing over this mountain, and these bucks had these gray coats in. And finally in this high country, I start to pick out a handful of bucks here. And there was 2 shooters on the hill. I'm like, we're in the game. Day 6, we are in the game. We've got one located. And once you find one, I enjoy all portions of the hunt, but the thrill of bow hunting is trying to get close and getting that stalk and getting that chance. So when I find those bucks, I'm pretty excited. And so we move our camp and we make our game plan. Long story short, I ended up arrowing that buck. I think it was my first stalk of the entire hunt, the 6th day of the hunt, and the first shooter buck I had seen. And I have a wind checker. I absolutely love it. I'm always checking the wind. But it's like I'd find an animal and I'd be checking the wind, and I'm trying to play that animal like what the wind's doing right there. The wind is totally different where that animal is. It always is, you know? And so like to understand how the winds move through the mountains. So you have a directional wind. Now, directional wind, like here in Montana, it's mostly a southwest wind. If we have a storm coming in, it's a north wind. As I'm looking, before I go into the backcountry, whether it's a scouting mission or whether I'm going back there for a hunt, I print out 10 days of what the forecast is going to do. If I have self-service up there, I'll check the forecast per day. It just lets me know, you know, as far as storms, what's coming in, and it'll also tell you the wind direction. It'll tell you southwest 6 miles an hour, north 9 miles an hour. To know how these winds move through these mountain ranges, a lot of times I've been hunting these bucks on a south wind. So hunting bucks on the lee wind side, hunting bulls on a lee wind side, it's a losing battle. I've got a spot in the Madisons that's so full of bulls every year, and big ones down in this basin. They're in there every single year. I can't tell you how many stalks I've busted. Every time I drop in there, so what I'm talking about is the lee wind side. So, you know, you've got a mountain and the wind's blowing against this side. As it comes over the top, it just swirls over the top. This is the lee wind side. That is a really tough area to kill a buck or a bull. It's extremely difficult. And you got to think outside the box when you're thinking wind too. But so that directional, getting that forecast, knowing that you got a southwest wind, knowing that you got a north wind, whatever it is, then you're looking at those basins and how that wind's going to blow against that basin. You get a basin that's the dominant wind side where the wind's blowing against this way, you're money. You know, that wind's going to blow and it's going to be hard and it's going to be consistent. And two, what I like to do, if I can get the directionals and the thermals working together, I know I'm money. I got both those winds working together. The winds will also change too on you. Like, so I talk about those thermals coming up as that air warms up top. Well, you know, the opposite is it at night, like as the mountain starts to get shaded, that air starts to cool down, that air starts to drop down the hill. What also can affect these thermal winds is if you have a storm come in, that the cloud, that overcast or it rains, it cools down that upper air and that air starts to drop down. So all of a sudden you're middle of the day, you think you got an afternoon consistent uphill thermal, you get a storm that rolls in, all of a sudden you got swirling winds. So that wind is like, it's so important on these stocks. So like always paying attention to it, taking notes on the wind, what it's doing, how it's blowing up drainages and draws, really understanding how these thermals are working up and down these draws and how these directionals are working on the mountainsides. Like a lot of times, that's the key to me killing these animals. It's just knowing that wind and knowing that mountain range. You know, so wind is so important. So another reason I like to stalk in the afternoons, I get my consistent thermal winds. I also get wind noise. Like noise is the next thing on a stalk. So you know, those mule deer, they have such big ears. They just hear sticks breaking. They hear approaches. They can just hear so well. So I try not to stalk these mule deer when it's really still out. I know it's a losing battle. Last year in Nevada, I located a really good tall 4-point. I may have a picture on here of him, but a really tall 4-point that I was hunting. And so I found this buck. I bedded him in his second bed, and he was bedded in a big sage flat, but I thought I could get in close to him. So I start my approach with a good wind, and it's just so still. Like I know I'm not going to get on this buck. I know that he's going to hear me. I can just tell the winds are so still, I just can't be quiet enough. As stealthy as I want to be in stocking shoes and moving slow and methodical, I just know there's just too much noise out there. I backed off the stock and I sat there for 3-4 hours. And then I let those afternoon directionals start picking up. And all of a sudden I've got a 6 to an 8 mile an hour wind. And I was able to crawl within 50 yards of that buck and put a perfect arrow in him when he stood up. Like just those high percentage moves. Like these stalks a lot of times come down to these these micro decisions that you make to hold off and not stock because it's not high percentage. And it's the toughest thing to do. It is the toughest thing to do to back out on a stock. Your mind, when you're stalking these deer or these elk, your mind's like, hurry up, see if he's there, look over the ledge, get to that spot, hurry up. Where really the closer you get, the slower you have to move. Like it's like the hands of a clock. These animals, they don't pick up on camo pattern. They don't pick up, like I don't even think they see blonde on you or light colors. Pretty much, like we've got all this 3D, we've got bino harnesses, bows in front of us, we've got good natural colors. If you don't move, they don't see you. Animals pick up on movement 100%. They catch you moving. And so when you get close in a stock, your body starts buzzing with that anticipation and that adrenaline, and you want to hurry up and see if he's there. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I'm 3 steps from the cliff, and instead of just going slow and really peeking over and trying to see him, like ridgeline assault on animals is so important. So I don't want to get off this, but as you start peeking in, like your body is screaming to you, hurry up and look over there, hurry up and get a shot. And you have to fight that urge. You have to move really slow and methodical. Keep control of yourself. And what I always think too is like, I'm not going to mess this up. If the deer moved off and I don't get a shot, that's fine. But I'm not going to rush too fast and break a stick and blow this whole thing up. I'm not going to rush to go see if he's over that ledge. I'm not going to force the issue. I'm not going to stalk recklessly. I'm going to do my part, and I'm going to move really slow and make sure it isn't me that blows him out of here. And if I get there and he's there, I'll probably kill that buck. If he's not, then I did my part. But what kills me is when I regret on a stalk, where it was like I hurried up and I made a mistake. I was like, man, I really messed up on that deal. You know, that was me. That deer was right there. If I just would have moved slow, I would have hit him. I had a buck, like I swear I had the next world record typical in front of me when I was a little younger in Colorado. This one killed me. So patience is so key. And on these stalks on these animals, I like to let them make the last move. Like, I don't like to force the issue. Sometimes you can get on a buck and you can shoot him in a bed, but it's really rare. Sometimes you can get on a bull and shoot him in his bed, but it's really rare. Most of the time what I do is I stalk into range of that bed and I let that animal get up and then offer a shot. And so I really like to make the animal make the last move, because it seems like if you force the issue, if you keep stalking, you just keep stalking until you get busted and it blows out of there and you blow the scenario up. But if you can just creepy crawl into range and then just let things materialize and happen, like that's when I kill things. So I like to just put myself into range, and then I like to let that deer get up on his own and feed in those basins in there and offer me a shot. And so I swear I had the next world record in Colorado. He was 205 to 210, and I think the world record was 205 at the time. Just a giant one, like that 35 wide with just 12 to 14 fronts and backs and just everything you could dream about on a mule deer. I made this great stock. Well, I about killed myself trying to get down the avalanche chute I went down. So I was going to start down this avalanche chute. I'm like, man, can I make that down that chute? It's a perfect approach to the buck. And so I'm getting there and I'm thinking about it. All of a sudden I see this doe and this fawn pop out of the gulch. And I'm like, well, if a doe and a fawn made it up, surely I can make it down. They did not come from down that gulch. They came from around the side hill somewhere, but there is no way a deer made it up that thing. But, anytime you have to make really good decisions in the backcountry, and steepness and ruggedness. I mean, you guys saw just like a side hill the other day across the Sphinx to make that trail, how steep that just those chutes got. Like, you get into those scenarios and you definitely don't want to push past your comfort level. Like, the main thing is to be safe and return to hunt that buck another day. No buck's worth dying for. You know, you got to just be able to hunt the backcountry. But anyways, I make it down this chute. It's on the edge of my skill level, but I strap my bow to my pack and I climb down there. I make this stalk on this buck and I put myself in perfect range of this buck. So, but I don't force the issue. I get into range of where this buck is and I just sit down and I start ranging stuff around me. And I range this tree down below me. And this tree is 40 yards down below me. And so I just let things happen. And I let this buck make the last move. And this big typical gets up and feeding around. And then he just starts walking out just like he read the script. Here it is, world record typical. And so he comes out and he walks right behind the tree that I had ranged. And this was in my younger years. I was so eager to get a shot. I just let the details slip away from me. So he walks behind this tree. I draw when he's behind the tree. Like, this buck has no idea I'm anywhere in the country. I've done my part. So this buck comes out from behind that tree. I'm at full draw, and he just starts feeding. He doesn't know I'm there or anything. And I settle my pin. I make sure I execute a good shot. Shot breaks, and it goes and just dips right below that buck. Like, the buck walked behind that tree. He was probably 45 yards, not 40. I just shot him for the wrong yardage. But it's like, slowing things down, paying attention to the details. I mean, man, I could have ate a sandwich, ranged that buck, and shot him. He had no idea I was there. Like, I just made a mistake. Like, I got eager in those adrenaline-filled moments, and I tried to rush it, Sure, I executed a perfect shot with my bow, at least what I thought. The arrow went just slow behind his brisket. I remember settling my pin and my shot breaking, but I just got lost in the details. I got lost in the rush of things, and it's so easy to do on a stock. And those micro decisions that you make, those nuances of a stock, those are the difference between killing those animals and not. So it's just like inside your head as you're making these stocks, it's just like keep it going slow. Just keep everything safe. Not never stalk recklessly. And like I've made this point before, when you're making a play at an animal, like you get this rush and you say that animal's up on the hillside and you come across this meadow. And you get across this meadow and you look at that deer and you go, gosh, he could see me. He might see me through this meadow. I'm just going to walk the edge and go. Like you're giving yourself a chance to be busted on that stalk. Why even risk it? Why let that animal know you're there? Like when you're pushing your limits of what you can get away with and what you can on a stalk. And on a stalk, I like to make plays on these animals, but at that same time, I'm just not going to expose myself. If I got a meadow there that I can't get across, well, then that's not going to happen. Maybe I got to sit back and watch that buck and wait for a better opportunity. Or maybe I can go around that meadow and it'll take me 5 more minutes, but I'm not going to expose myself to the buck. It's so important, those small steps, because it crushes you when you get back there and you get a chance at one of these bucks or one of these bulls, and you just make a quick play through a meadow and you're just moving to get on the elk, or you're making a quick play on this buck, or you go across an exposed meadow and you spook this opportunity. You work so hard for those opportunities. And that's part of bow hunting that'll take you to your lowest low. Like to mess up a stalk, to mess up a shot. Oh my gosh, yeah, that'll take you to your lowest low. Or to make a bad shot. Like those things happen in the backcountry, and when you fail, you mess up a stalk or you mess up a shot, you get so close. And in your mind, you have been working so hard for this opportunity that when you get this chance at this buck and then you mess it up, you get so excited that you put the pin on him and you make the shot break, and who knows where the arrow goes. Like, it crushes you. Like, it makes you feel like I had my opportunity, I messed it up. And sometimes you're working 7, 8, 9 days for this opportunity. And like I say, you feel like killing this bull or killing this buck is impossible. You finally made it happen, and then you duff the shot. You duff the stock. This is part of bow hunting, guys. Like, I fail all the time. I fail on elk all the time. I fail on mule deer all the time. And try to work as hard as you can to eliminate all the variables and do your part. But this is just part of the game. You're going to be a bow hunter. You're going to be a hunter in general. You're going to fail. So part of this is that, I talk about how important that attitude and your mental game is. This is going to test you. When you miss an animal and you were so close and you worked so hard, this is going to test you. Your mind's going to want to tell you to go home, to give up. You had your opportunity. How are you ever going to create this again? You've been working 9 days for this opportunity. How are you ever going to get in bow range again? Like, that was like a miracle just to happen and just to get that chance. But the quicker you can get over that and just go, I got to get another opportunity. When I miss, I'm actually my most dangerous. I get this thought in my head, I want redemption so bad, I get so driven that I start hunting those mountains like an animal. A lot of the biggest deer I've shot, biggest bulls I've shot, come after a miss that season, after I missed an animal or I messed up an opportunity. Like, redemption to me is so important, and the quicker I can forget about that shot and just go like, I know I can shoot, I've been working hard all year, I know I can make that shot. I just need to execute. I need to pull on my shot and let that shot break. I try to dissect what went wrong and think about how I can make it better and confidence in myself. And then I just start working hard to get another opportunity. Like, I just start traveling country, and it's amazing. It may have taken you 8, 9 days, but heck, you may get into a buck the next day and kill him. It's just like that persistence and that constant effort, it pays off. It pays off, I can't say every time or that you can count on it, but in the long run, it pays off. Like that's what creates consistent success. That mental attitude of being able to pick yourself up from those lows, whether that's a failed stalk, a failed shot, and having confidence in yourself and your skills, and to keep pushing on. And that's the true spirit of a backcountry hunter. Nothing feels better. And once you start to see a rattlesnake, then it gets inside your head. And then you think there's a rattlesnake behind every bush, behind every mind. Like your biggest challenge in the backcountry is your mind. Wrapping it around these lightning storms, these grizzly bears, these rattlesnakes, this weather, these challenges, to try to be persistent and keep out there even when you're faced with these major challenges, or even when you're faced with real danger. Your body's going to be screaming for you to get out of the high country, get back to your house, get to where it's comfortable. But out there in the backcountry, like that's where we grow, where we push ourselves, where we challenge ourselves. Like us guys need that passion in our life. So to get out there, so the Breaks has the rattlesnakes, and I tell you, I'd almost take grizzly bears over rattlesnakes now. Like those things freak me out. If they rattle and do their job, they're a good snake, they're fine. And I try to not let it affect me or affect my hunting. But sometimes you get into these thick patches. I can remember, I remember a couple scenarios with rattlesnakes. I haven't been bit yet, but I've definitely stepped over a couple. And boy, when you go to step on one, you never jump so high. You can jump to the moon. But I remember hunting with my buddy Dan out there, and we were in this canyon where we were starting to see him. And I was just walking along, and of course I go to put my foot down, and as soon as I look down, I'm coming right down on a coiled snake right there. So instantly I'm up in the air and I hop, and as I'm up in the air floating, time stops, and I'm able to see all these baby snakes that are coiled around it, like 100 landmines around it. My foot barely hit the floor as I high step out of there as I've got all these snakes. There's been some sketchy scenarios, but it's the same as anything. Like you prepare yourself for it. My dad has snake chaps that he wears around. Makes him feel more comfortable. They're hot as heck and you sweat so much. Like I don't know how he does, but he has snake chaps and makes him feel more comfortable out there. For me, I have to just look down and look at my feet, look where I'm walking. And I've been in this country enough. I built the confidence to know that I can navigate around in thick snake country. And I know they're not around every bush and they're not going to be snapping at me from every spot. So, I keep my head on a swivel, but preparing yourself for these challenges and these hardships you're going to face, it just sets you up for success. Then when you're in there in the backcountry and you face one of these challenges, you've already thought about it. You've already got your game plan to execute, to get through this challenge, to make it to the other side, to keep persistent, to keep after these animals, to eventually create an opportunity and be successful. And that's the whole key for me, is just looking at these and breaking them down, realizing what they are, and seeing the bigger picture for me is to go have these adventures. And I'm the same way. A lot of times these big hunts, I'm nervous pulling out of my driveway, saying bye and kissing my family. Like I know I'm putting it all out there and I'm going to be out in nature, but gosh, you get up there, you're able to see your life so much clearer, it seems like. Like when you're in your everyday and your work mode and you're back and forth and your family, like you get away from all that, it gives you perspective on what's really important. And it gives me perspective on my life, like how I can be a better husband, a better father, better at work, like a better human being. Like it gives you perspective up on there on the mountain, and you bring that back with you. When you come back, you're able to attack life a different way. You're able to appreciate things a different way. Like you come back, and to be able to fill up your water at your tap instead of walking 1,000 feet down to that lake, like that's pretty sweet. Like to be able to shower in a hot shower, like God dang, that's nice. To be able to hop in your car and drive down the road and travel country, like it just gives you this new perspective. And you leave so fulfilled. And so that adventure, that's all why we do it. So, I think it's just it's a great place for our passion. And I know I've fallen in love with it. And I continue to fall in love with it. Like every year, I just continue to prepare more and work harder to be better prepared for the mountains. It's made me a better person. So I I love chasing these things around in the backcountry. I just think it's such an advantage. And these skills that you learn in the backcountry, like I talk about wild, remote backcountry and wilderness. But the truth is, like, I do a few wilderness hunts a year or a few backcountry hunts a year. But all these skills, all this mental toughness, this knowing how to backpack hunt, like all this information transposes to all the units across North America. Like I hunt different spots for antelope or mule deer. I love hunting mule deer out in eastern Montana. I hunt them a lot, and it's broken open country out there. It's beautiful, coulees and canyons and grasslands, big mule deer populations. Like, it's absolutely awesome out there. But it's not exactly remote backcountry. There's roads crisscrossing through this country everywhere. But what I'm able to do is take these backcountry skills, transpose them, and put them into this roaded country. Like, a lot of times, I can do better in high pressure units or roaded country because I'm the only wilderness guy there. Like everybody that's hunting there is using a road, using a four-wheeler, using a truck. They're using the easy way, where I'm so used to grinding out in the wilderness that I go into these spots that's roaded country, and I look at it and I find the most remote part of this roaded country. And all of a sudden, like, I don't have to put that much effort in, and I get back there and there's nobody back there. I've found my own wilderness, or my own island of this vast, desolate backcountry, like right within a high unit area. And there's game animals there, and I get my own experience. And so to take all this information, you start transposing it into all your hunts. You start taking this mental toughness and they go into all your hunts. So even when I'm hunting with my dad and we're hunting eastern Montana, it's easier country. Like, all of a sudden now I can take my backpack and leave off this road, and I found spots where, like, I backpacked my dad in 6 miles in there, and I'm able to show my dad just this epic hunting. Like, it's general rifle season and we'll see 25 bucks a day. We'll be able to pick between them and pick the biggest 4-point and make plays. Like, I'm able to kill, like, I've got a picture up here of me in orange with a mule deer I killed this last season. I killed a really nice heavy big buck during general rifle with my bow. And the reason is because I'm good at locating these animals and finding this country that holds them. I find the most remote parts of this country. I hike into it. Now, not every spot I hike into in eastern Montana has this kind of country. I've hiked into a lot, just like these mountain ranges in Montana, and I get my butt kicked and I don't find what I'm looking for. But you just cross that one off the list and you're into the next one. And you don't have to do a marathon a day to go cover country. Like I say, I don't redline myself. I just keep putting in effort. I just keep putting in the effort, and it just happens for me. And so, like, I'm taking this backcountry style and I'm taking it to this roaded country, and I do really well in that roaded country because, like I say, I'm the only wilderness guy in there. Everybody else is just day hunting from their truck, hunting from camps. And, I'm able to get into this remote country, and a lot of times this remote country is where all the animals get pressured too. So all of a sudden, I'm just in the best spot in the unit, and there's nobody there. All because I use these backcountry skills, all because I just keep persistent, keep covering the mountains. So these backcountry skills and this mindset that I'm talking about, you can use this absolutely anywhere to be successful. And it's been one of the greatest things in my life to find this place for my passion, to be able to backcountry hunt and to put so much into it. And I had such a good time with you guys the other day, like getting to the mountains and being able to live in that alpine environment, being able to glass up there. The guys that I peek grabbed the top of that Sphinx, that's such a cool experience, and to be able to share it with you guys, man, it just means the world to me. Like, I am living my dream, like being able to hunt as much as I have. Yeah, I've got a full-time job, I've got responsibilities, but I get to hunt a bunch, and I've structured my life that way, and I am just so fortunate. And I'm just going to eat it up and make the most of it. And when I'm passionate about something, like, it comes out and I'm able to share it with you guys. And you guys have that same passion. All the conversations I've had with you guys, it's not a bunch of newbies at this camp. Like, you guys are seasoned hunters that are trying to learn and get better. You guys have made the first step to getting better, like absorbing this information, hanging out with guys that are consistently successful and absorbing that, like that. You guys are taking that step towards success. You guys are putting forth that effort. And I just think it's so cool what Ryan's put on. I have so much respect for what Ryan does and how he hunts the backcountry. It's so nice the compliments that he gave me before. It just means the world to me when you get the respect of your peers. Same thing with Cody. He's just an animal in the mountains. It really means a lot to have the respect of your peers. Shooting at Cody's was so fun last night. Man, he's just got the perfect place to shoot out there. God, David Brinker playing the music last night, like that was a special experience in its own. And in life, all we are is the experiences we've had and the places we've been. And it's just pretty cool to share with you guys. I really appreciate your time. Yeah, we'll get on to the next guy, but thanks a bunch, guys. I appreciate it.
I'm in information overload, so if there's anybody's got questions,
yeah, that's a good idea.
We'll get to a little bit. We'll do some roundtable stuff, but you guys got questions while it's top of mind, or while we're sitting here and it's top of his mind as well. Anybody have specific questions or things he covered that maybe you want to clarify more?
Mm-hmm. So earlier, when you were talking about all the different mountain ranges that you pounded, the 12 different mountain ranges look for deer, what do you think on those 12 unsuccessful ones necessarily? What was it? Were the ridges not running north to south? Were they different? What would something like that? What are you looking for, I guess?
So mule deer, like in Montana, we just don't have a lot of high country mule deer. We don't have the migrational mule deer that go to the tops of the mountain and go down to the bottoms. They'll live in a lot of that mid-breast habitat, you know? And also here in Montana, it has to do with the way the elk compete for the same food source as the deer. The elk always win out. And so where you find really good mule deer habitat is really good elk habitat in Montana. Some of these other states, what they'll have is they'll have these grass bowl basins on top with not a lot of water. The elk can't live up there, but the deer can. So then they don't compete for the same food source, so then you can have high populations of both. But what I found is that mountain ranges, you either go hunt elk in that mountain ranges or you go hunt deer in that mountain range. But there's places where you can hunt both, but it's usually not the best place to hunt elk, or it's not the best place to hunt deer. So like in my valley in the Madison, I could find a big buck there, but it's not the best place to hunt big bucks. I may hunt 10 years to kill one. Why not find the mountain range that has that population and grows those deer? And then I'm walking around finding bucks on those top features. So in Montana, a lot of it was paying my dues, learning the high country and where deer like and where deer want to be. A lot of it is this Montana is just really tough for high country mule deer, but there are some mountain ranges out there that hold them. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Brian, when you see that buck find that secondary bed and you decide you're going to make a play on that buck, ballpark, how long do you have to make that stalk and make that play?
Oh, that's a great question. So it really varies. The hotter it is, like the more I know that buck's gonna stay put. And so what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to put him in his afternoon bed. And in that afternoon bed, he wants to be in the shade and he pretty much wants to stay there until his evening feeding. He might get up and feed around where he's at a little bit, or he may get around and change beds, but he's gonna be in that afternoon spot and he's gonna be there for a handful of hours. You know, it varies from 1 hour to 4 hours, and every mule deer is different. But I try to figure, like, to be in the same bed, he'll be in the same bed no longer than I'd say an hour and a half, 2 hours. He will change beds even if he's in his afternoon bed. He's gonna get up and he's gonna move around and he's gonna get the shade right again, because the way the sun comes over, eventually the sun starts hitting his bed. So he'll have to get up, he'll have to stretch his legs, he might feed around a little bit, and then he's gonna re-bed. Maybe in the same bed, maybe in a different one, or maybe, but usually in the afternoon bed, they don't move too far. From the morning to afternoon bed, they can move a half a mile. They can move 500,000 feet up the mountain from their morning bed to their afternoon bed. But once they get in that afternoon bed, I'm pretty confident they're going to be right around that same area. So I try to plan, if I need to get into them on that exact bed, like I give them an hour, 2 hours, but really I know where he's at, and I'm always trying to look and kind of keep tabs on him as I can. And as I'm approaching in, then I'm looking at that bed where he's at. And if he's moved beds, like I may continue in or hold up on the stock till I can relocate him or wait for him to get up. But usually once they get in that afternoon bed, I'm pretty confident that they're going to stay in that area for the rest of the afternoon. Yeah.
Is there a typical direction they might go when they get up from afternoon bed? Up, down? How do they usually work?
Usually when they get up from their afternoon bed, like I try to figure out where they're going to feed. Like where's the best feed? Usually they'll feed out towards the best feed. So, it's not always up or down or left or right, but I'd look at it as they're in this timber. Where did they come in the morning? Maybe they came in from this side in the morning and their feeding feature's right here and it's all rock here. Well, I got a pretty good idea he's going to come back out this way when he comes back out. So I can set up for that. But maybe he moved in here and there's another good feeding feature here. So sometimes you got to set up, like when you get in close quarters with those things and you're waiting for him to make the last move, like if I get up there and I got a feeding feature on both sides, like I want to set up where I can see both sides because I don't want him to come out to the left and I'm set up for the right and I never see him and never get an opportunity. So I'd almost rather hold up where I can see whether he's going to come out left or right. So I like to have a view of their exit points, and then I try to look at the feature that I'm hunting, and then I try to determine which way I think he's going to come out. If that makes sense. Yes, sir.
So you have this scenario, it's morning and you're glassing this basin and you have a bunch of, say a bachelor group of bucks in this basin, and you see them kind of feeding out there in the early morning and they start to head down into the timber, and you can't exactly pinpoint their location and you want to set an ambush. Would you expect them to come out in the evening where they're feeding in the morning? Obviously you can't predict the wind, what it's going to be doing, but is that something that you would do, or would you just sit back and watch and maybe analyze it for a few days and see?
That's a good question. Yeah, so you find these basins, they're feeding out or you find these bucks, and they're feeding out in the basin, and they feed down into the timber, and you lose them. What do you do from there? So yeah, I think that's a really good question, and every scenario is different. So I'd say you have the highest percentage of them coming back out to the feeding feature they left from, but it's not a guarantee. Like you may have 51% they come back out in that meadow, 49% says they feed somewhere else, but that's always my best bet. If I'm trying to set an ambush, I try to ambush where they were feeding in the morning. I try to play them like they're gonna come back out in that meadow. Same thing for elk. That's my number one play. They go up into the timber, they disappear, I don't have a stock. I'm trying to play them to come back down that meadow. It doesn't always happen that way, but that's probably your highest percentage play, is that they're gonna come back out in that meadow and feed. If I see those bucks bed down in that timber, a lot of times what I'll try to do is I'll try to find a vantage point of where they bedded. So maybe I can work around that ridge and I can get better in the grain of country and glass into where they're bedded in there. So then I'll spend my day and I'll kind of walk around and I'll just be kind of glassing into that timber trying to see them. And I like setting ambush for deer, but in that same breath, like the wind is so important that I don't want to go sit like in bow range of where those deer are going to come out and sit there for 4 hours, because most likely the wind's going to swirl and let them know I'm there. So if I'm setting an ambush for mule deer, I want to make sure the wind's right, and when I move into that position, I'm moving in like I'm stalking that deer. So if I'm going to set an ambush on those bucks and say they went from the basin, they went into the timber here, I'm only going to do that if I've got a really good wind. So that wind's screaming, I'm thinking, okay, I think they're going to come back out this afternoon. That's a good idea. I'm going to set an ambush. Or I'll work around and I'll try to glass them in their beds, because if I can see them in their beds, then I can make a good stalk on them. And they will get up throughout the day, like I say, every 2 hours, and change beds and move around. Sometimes you just catch one of the smaller buddies and it lets you know where the other ones are. And then pretty soon you go, God, I think I can stalk down in there. So every scenario is different. Another thing I'd do is I'd say, okay, I lost them. I don't have a high percentage. I'm going to sit on this vantage point and see where they come out tonight. So I'm going to get on a good vantage point. I'm going to wait to see them all. And then when they come out at night, I'm going to make a play. And at night, you have the advantage of a downhill thermal. Like the wind start cooling as the shade starts coming down, so it starts coming down. So my play may be to sit up on a vantage point, keep my wind out there, not even let those deer know I'm in the country, let them feed back out, and now I'm gonna make an evening play down and around them with a good wind. Or like you say, even let it go a day. I don't like to, ultimately to kill a bull or a buck, you have to go make a play on them. And I've got to where I found this giant buck, you know, I find the buck of my dreams, and I wanna make such a good play on them that I almost end up being too patient. That I'll give up 2, 3, 4 days watching this buck. You know, I want to be patient and make a high percentage play, but I don't want to waste my entire hunt to make a play on this buck because there's so many variables that can go wrong, and I fail so much, so I might wait till day 7 and make a stalk and blow that buck, and it might be my whole hunt. I'd rather make a stalk day 2, you know, on a decent scenario, and like maybe pick that buck up later in the hunt or keep hunting. Like to kill them, you got to go make a play. And for elk, you see a herd of elk, like a lot of times to kill an elk, you just got to go get into them. Let your instincts take over and go move with the herd and go travel with them. Like to kill an elk, you got to go get into an elk. So like I'm aggressive with trying to get plays on these bucks. And a lot of times, you know, I'll give it a day, I'll give it a couple days, but I'm not going to sit on a buck 4 or 5 days without making a play. I'm going to make a play on them and go see if I can make something happen. But that's typically how I would handle like a scenario like that, I think.
Thanks.
Yeah, you bet.
All right, guys. Trying to keep it on time.
Yeah.